Hey everybody, Mark from Northeast Bass Fishing. How you doing? I'm back with another video from one of the local lakes I was fishing last week. And on this one I had two cameras going, so you'll see some fish catches from both views. I didn't edit everything combining, I just kind of put them as they came. So you'll see I'll catch a fish and you'll see it again from another angle too after you see this angle. But this is the first fish I caught. The ramp was right where I kind of am there. And I'm just throwing a chatterbait. And that's the first fish, about 5 or 10 minutes into the day. Nice little keeper, largemouth. That's a jackhammer chatterbait. White and chartreuse. I think it's a half ouncer. And here it is just from the back view. So I have two cameras going. So I'm going to try to do this now that I have two cameras so you guys can kind of see, the whole shot as well as just, the close-up. But I like running the two cameras. It's a little more editing to do, but it's not too bad. So this is that first fish again, just from the other angle. So you can see the wide view of the lake and everything. And I'm just working down that shoreline. Like to the back of me is where the boat ramp is. And this was last week. I think it was last Tuesday. And you can see I'm still not realizing that back camera is there because I'm showing it only to the front camera, at least at the beginning here. That fish was maybe 2.5 pounds, not a bad one. And this is a little further up that same shoreline. Here's the second catch of the day. And this lake is a very good chatterbait lake. I didn't know what to expect as far as the spawn went. I hadn't been there that time in May before. This fish was a little better than the other one. But I usually do well through this stretch, either frogging or throwing a jig or on a chatterbait. So that was the second fish. That one was actually a little better. Here it is from the back camera view of that same fish. So I was just working down that shoreline. That point kind of comes out there. You can see to the right where that house is and that boat's turned over. That point kind of pops out there. So I always like to throw baits over there. There's the point there, kind of comes out into the water. I always like to throw stuff over that point, get some bites there. The corner to the right usually gets some pads, but they weren't up yet. Now here, this is probably about a half hour later. I'm up on the shoreline. You can see the wind had picked up. I'm throwing a jig, and that shoreline has a lot of brush in the water. And I'm always surprised they don't really do that well there. But this time I actually caught one, a decent largie, on one of those little brush piles there. So you see the wind is starting to pick up a little bit. And that's a pretty decent keeper right there. That's on the queen tackle. Tungsten jig, half-ounce jig, super pork trailer. And I think that might have been the biggest fish of the day. I mean, that I caught. I did see some cruising largemouth around beds that were real big, but they didn't want anything. Here's the view from the back, and I didn't even know I hadn't even engaged the reel yet, and I just kind of flipped that out and I was swimming it along. Because as I've said, that's always a good-looking shoreline that I really never do too well on. But that was a nice keeper. That was one of the few jig fish I caught that day. The jig wasn't really the way to go, as you'll see as this video continues. But there's the view from the back of the boat. Now I realize I got a camera back there, so I can show it to the camera a little bit. And for some reason, my back camera, there was no sound at all. So I got to check the camera. Maybe I just didn't have the sound on. I don't know. Maybe it's the new camera I got. I just haven't checked all the settings on it to make sure it's the way I want it. And here I'm just kind of fishing. I just fished a point that I really like, and it didn't produce anything. And I got to some open water, and I started throwing the chatterbait around again. Wind was kind of blowing through there pretty decent. So I throw the chatterbait, and here's the first toothy critter of the day. Not a big one, but they do like the same baits as the bass like. And I did catch a few today, you'll see. And I don't want to just edit out all the pickerel. That would be nice to the pickerel. So I don't mind catching a pick every now and then, as long as it doesn't steal my bait. So that's the first pickerel of the day. You see a couple more that I grabbed that day. But he didn't steal my bait, so I didn't mind. But I'm just kind of working. That big area there goes back to the right is a big cove. It's maybe 6, 7, 8 feet there. and I'm just working that chatterbait. Here's another angle of it. So I'm just kind of throwing and covering some water, seeing where these fish. This is before I've seen any beds. So as you'll see, I didn't really know what was going on in the lake as far as the spawn went. But once I get further over down the shoreline, I'll start to figure things out a little more. But as I said, I don't want to just, you know, I don't show you every fish catch. You know, some of the ones that get off, or I don't show every single thing. But I don't want to disrespect all the pickerel in all the lakes. But that was the first pickerel of the day. I think I caught 2 or 3 that day. You're always going to mix them in when you're bass fishing. Here's a hump that's out in the middle of the lake, so I switched to a spinnerbait here. And usually it's pretty good for some big fish, but I kept getting hits, but nothing was hooking up. And then I finally get one hooked up, and you'll see why. This monster that I catch here, this is what I think was just smacking the spinnerbait, these little bass. So here's a little fish tank fish. You could put in your fish tank or your water garden. He got hooked up after I probably had 4 or 5 bites out there. And if you look straight ahead, that's a nice point that I usually do well on, but it didn't produce anything on this day, which is surprising. Usually that's a go-to spot on the lake that I really like to flip. I like to throw chatterbaits and spinnerbaits there and flukes, but it wasn't producing. So I went out to the hump here. You see they got the markers there. But that was it. That little dink was it. I was getting like hits, and they were getting off and stuff, so it was probably small bass. Here I'm along the shoreline again, working up to that rock point you see coming out there. And I'm just throwing the chatterbait here. I think this might be another pickerel, if I remember right. This is usually a good spot on the lake, but, as I found out, the fish were kind of in a different mode. Just previous to this fish here, this I believe this is a gator. Yeah, it's another little pickerel. Before this, I finally saw some beds, and I saw, to the right of where I am back, there's a little cove there. Right before that, there's a shoreline that's usually good, and it wasn't really, since you didn't see any footage from there, obviously I didn't catch anything there. Here's that pickerel again from the back view. But I saw some big largemouth, or one big largemouth on a bed and another smaller one, and they didn't want nothing to do with any baits. Sometimes largemouth can be. When I was on that other lake the other week that I showed you the clips of, the largemouth were killing the Ned rig. On this lake, the minute you got a bait by that bed, they just took off, and they didn't just come right back. Now, this is one of the best. These next 2 bites are the best bites I had of the day. Here I switched to a fluke, a zoom fluke, and I'm working this rock point down. And this and the next bite are my 2 best bites of the day, which these are the kind of bites you get when you're glad you have a camera going. I'm just throwing that soft plastic jerkbait, that zoom fluke, and I kill it, and that bass just came flying up and nailed it. At the time, I thought it was the greatest bite of the day. He really, this is not a huge fish, 2.5 pounder maybe, but the way he came up and nailed it was almost like a topwater bite, and that made my day. And as it turns out, I made the right changing to the zoom fluke, and maybe not throwing the spinnerbait as much, or the chatterbait or the jig, and going to that fluke and covering whatever that. You see, just a white zoom fluke. That's not a monster bass, 2.25 maybe. 2.5 if I was exaggerating. Here's the view from the back, and you'll see him come up, and it's almost like I said, it's almost like a topwater bite here, which was, at the time, was the best bite of the day. But it's a nice rock point that comes out. There's all rock along there. It's always a good place to fish. And boom, he just comes up and nails it. It was a really nice bite. And I'm just throwing that on one of my my Enigma Epon rods right there. 8-pound fluoro. Ardent Sea-Force spinning reel. And you can kind of see the rocks, how they go under the water there. But that was a nice bite. At the time, that made my day until the next fish, which made my day for a different reason, which you'll see in a sec. But see, well, look, I'm realizing I got 2 cameras going. So now I'm moving down. I'm on the same shoreline. I'm throwing that fluke, and boom. And okay, so here we go, another fish. No big deal at the time, not a monster. But as you'll see in a second, I'm totally surprised by what I catch here. in a second because I did not know. And if you could hear the sound on this, like I said, this camera is not, this view is not giving you any any sound. But I mean, I'm dubbing over it anyway. But you can see that's a smallmouth. I didn't even not even know that there were smallmouth in this lake. Now I don't know why I don't have the view from the. Maybe I forgot to edit that one in, but it doesn't really matter. That's a smallmouth bass. I did not know there were smallmouth bass in this lake. And he's not a monster, a little over 2 pounds, but he really came up and crushed that fluke, and it really made my day to catch that fish. I don't know what happened to the other view of that. I don't know if maybe I just forgot to add it to this, but no big deal. You guys get to see actually the better view. And here I'm working around. That's a point that comes out, and it goes into a little cove, and I'm just throwing my fluke around because after those couple fish, I was pretty much sticking with the fluke, and here we go, another gator. And he's trying to get into those pads. So another little pickerel on the fluke. He didn't steal my bait. That's a good thing. And when I throw the fluke, I've just got a 4/0 red Gamakatsu hook. So that's my pickerel. I think that might be that might be the end of the pickerel videos, video parts. So here it is. Here's that same shot from the other. I was just kind of throwing around those pads that are finally coming up. I think last year at this time the pads in that lake were had grown more at that point. They were just starting to come out. A few of them had reached the surface, but as you went along, you could see them starting to grow, but they just hadn't topped out yet. Because I even brought my frog rod with me because I always bring a frog rod to this lake, and it wasn't time for that yet. So now there's an island in a lake, and I was just kind of working around the island, and I got surprised here a few more times, and I just started throwing that fluke up to the shoreline. There may have been beds there. I wasn't sure. There was some areas that looked like beds. But this lake is kind of a dark bottom lake. It's really hard to see. Even your polarized sunglasses on, it's still hard to see kind of what's really going on down there. And the way the sun and the wind was kind of hitting that day made it a little difficult. But amazingly, on a lake I did not know had smallies, I now catch a second smallie on the fluke, which surprised the heck out of me. And this smallie you see my line is totally screwed up there. So I think after this fish, it took me a while. I had to, chop that line up and off and retie. So now I'm just working up this bank here around the island, and I'm going to throw this fluke again up on the shoreline. Now I'm not really sure if I'm seeing beds, but it's just areas that are just a little lighter. And as I said, this is kind of a dark bottom lake, and hopefully you guys will get a good shot of this. I think my overhead camera is still working at this point, or I'm sorry. I know the overhead one is working, but I'm sure I got the overhead shot of this too. But I just chucked this fluke up to the bank, and boom, there's another smallie. So up there, there's some light spots. I guess the smallies were bedding around that island. And now I have fished that island in the spring since I moved up here, and I've never caught a smallie there. Never seen a smallie. Now maybe I just totally missed the spawn. I've never been there during it, and now I know. Now I know there's smallies in there. You catch one, you think, okay, maybe there's a few in the lake, but there's more than one. Now, are there some real big ones in there? I don't know. The fact that I caught 3 in one day, and if you could hear what I was saying 3 smallies in one day. What's going on? Am I on the lake where I think I'm at? But I think I might have messed up. I think I'm showing you the same fish again. I think I kind of screwed up and didn't delete that other more edited version of this clip, but you'll just get to see the smallie quick again. I thought I probably cut it down and I just forgot to delete it before I added it to the iMovie. So so if you like that smallie, you get to see him twice. Same fish. I'd like to tell you this was the 4th smallie, but no, it's the same one. can see there's that 4-aught hook. White, that's the white zoom super fluke. I haven't found a soft plastic jerkbait that I really like better than the zoom fluke. So now this fish is very popular. You probably see the overhead, the back camera view of it. Hopefully I edited it down a little tighter for you. So I'm still a novice when it comes to editing, so I'm getting there. I do all the editing right now on my iPad. I'm sure there's probably more efficient ways to do it. But here's that's the back view of the, and I just have my my Tacticam in the back there on my YoloTech. If you guys have ever seen the YoloTech mount, the long one you can extend out, you can stick it in back, and you can keep your batteries charged all day because you're going to connect that. You're going to put it right in the slot for your back light, and just draw power from your battery. And I have a battery just for that. Now I haven't used it in that way yet because I have that juice box on there, so the juice box will just run all day. But there's that nice smallie. That's actually the first nice smallie. So I kind of edited these out of order a little bit, not too bad. I always kind of try to do the you can kind of see that camera like right by my back of my leg right there. That's the other camera. So when you see that view, that's where that camera is coming from. But right around now, that camera is starting to die, as I found out, because I just had the regular Tacticam battery on there. And that gives you about 3 to 4 hours. That was about, that had about done it for the day. So those smallies got a lot of love as far as video went. That's only because I made a mistake. So sorry I extended the video a little bit before there. You could see the same fish a couple times. But 3 smallies on a lake I did not know had smallies. So that was pretty cool. That was like the highlight of the day. I start working down the island in the opposite direction here, going back towards the end, and I throw the net up on the shoreline, which kind of looks like a bed. And I try to catch a largie, decent largie on the Ned. And I was just wondering, and if you guys look straight ahead, the point of that island, I saw a huge largemouth on a bed, a huge one. And I went and casted the Ned by him a few times, and every time I did, he would like disappear for 5 minutes and come. So I mean, I don't really have the patience. And really, what's the use of, harassing a largemouth on a bed? I gave it a little while and just moved on. And here's just the view from the back of the boat of that same fish. I'm just kind of looking. You can't even tell that there's any really light spots there. You can kind of see it, like right there. There's that light spot by the bank. I just pitched that net up there. And, usually largemouths are kind of finicky on the bed. As I was saying with that big one that was on that point. And that was a big bass that I saw in the front there. And I took like 2 casts at where the bed was, and I saw him once, and then I didn't see him again. He was gone, and he was not interested, and so I didn't even bother him. I let him do his thing. But that was a decent largemouth right there on that pink Ned. And then I leave the island area. I fished that whole cove in there. I went in there. I had lunch. I fished that whole cove you see straight ahead, and I didn't catch anything of any significance. I'm now working back towards the ramp. There's a point that comes out there. I just start throwing the chatterbait again. It's a little choppy from the wind. And actually, this might be another gator. I don't remember. Let's see. I think this might be another small pickerel. So actually, the pickerel got some good love in this video. Yeah, look at that. Boop. And that was my favorite kind of pickerel. Quick release. Right back in the lake. I don't even have to touch him. And this point sometimes produces. Now, here's a dock. I'm coming down. I'm heading back towards the ramp. And I take my jig and I throw it by this dock. And I never catch anything off this dock. And since you're seeing this, you can figure it out. I throw it here in the front of the dock. And doink, he bites it. and I'm like, well, and I was even saying to myself as I'm getting to it, well, there's a dock I never catch anything off of, very rarely. And this shoreline gets really nice weeds in the summer. I usually catch them in the weeds, not so much on the dock. But it's a nice keeper. And that's on that queen tackle tungsten jig, super pork there. Just flipped it in. And then I'm coming back. You can kind of see that bed on the right there. I just took the jig and flinged it up there, and the largemouth nailed it. So I believe that's it for the fish catches on this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry about that little screw up on that smallie you got to see like 3 times. But it was a good day. Caught some decent fish, and hopefully all the sound is good on this and everything, and the picture looks good. So I'm going to try to do some more filming with both cameras and give you a couple different views. So I will see you guys soon on YouTube. Mark out.